The Sherman Jumbo is a beloved and infamous vehicle in War Thunder, but did you know it has a low-tier cousin with a massive, high-explosive cannon bolted onto it? The M4A3 105 is available in the American and French tech trees at a BR of 3.0, making it the first Sherman you'll have access to in them. But it doesn't play like most Shermans. It's a superb mid-range brawler / tank destroyer, rather than a general-purpose medium tank. This is a fantastic tank at 3.0. In this guide, you'll learn how to use this absolute weapon to steamroll low-tier tanks with impunity. I'll cover the historical background first, then discuss the gun, armour and mobility. Then I'll give some pointers on playing the tank, and some advice on how to go about countering it. Finally, I'll sum all my thoughts up in the conclusion. If you want to skip ahead to a particular section, there will be timestamps in the description. Let's get started. Part 1. History. The M4 medium tank, or Sherman, needs no introduction. It was a massively versatile tank that saw many variants and modifications through its long service life. And the subject of today's video is just that, a modification. From the very beginning of its life, the Sherman had provision for mounting alternative main guns, and in August of 1943, Chrysler was testing prototype Shermans mounted with 105mm howitzers, with the intent to replace the M7 Priest self-propelled artillery. It was thought that the Shermans could not only replace the Priests as artillery pieces, but also provide direct fire support if necessary, and take more punishment than the thinly armoured M7s. The first M4A3 105s came into service in late June 1944 after the D-Day landings, and saw use in almost every operating theatre of the war. The British, Canadians and other Commonwealth forces received some under the Lend-Lease programme, and used them in the Mediterranean and on the Western Front, and the US Army used them in the Pacific as well as in Europe. In both fronts, 105 Shermans were largely used as stationary artillery pieces to bombard targets and take out bunkers, and thus rarely saw action up close. But after the Okinawa campaign, a small number of M4A3 105s were converted to carry a flamethrower alongside the howitzer in preparation for an invasion of mainland Japan. Thanks to the huge production run, over 3,000 M4A3 105s were built over the course of World War II, many examples of the 105 Sherman continued service long after the Second World War, fighting in the Korean War and serving in militaries from India to South Africa until as late as the 1960s. You can find surviving examples in museums all around the world. Part 2. Armament. In War Thunder, the most notable thing about this Sherman is its gun. The M4 105mm howitzer is capable of blasting straight through every single tank you'll face, thanks to its great heat round. There are a few quirks to work around, however. Due to the bulky 105mm gun taking up room, your gunner has to manually crank the turret around in this Sherman, meaning your gun traverse is a comically bad 3.6 degrees a second stock. The lack of a powered turret also means that you miss out on the vertical stabiliser that all other Shermans have, which makes your gun a bit bouncy when travelling at high speed or coming to a halt. The low muzzle velocities of both rounds make long-distance sniping difficult, so the cannon is best used at medium to short range. With a 13-second stock reload, twice as long as most other Shermans, it pays to not miss your shots. Despite these minor flaws, the gun is still great. The stock M1HE shell you start with will easily overpressure most light and medium tanks if you aim for the roof or the cupola, and it's only heavier tanks that will shrug it off. Your top priority though should be to unlock the M67 heat round. It really will work on anything, going right through the turret faces of KV-1 and 2s, and overpressuring light vehicles with ease. This is the round I'd main once you unlock it. Maybe bring a few HE shells for the occasional cupola or open top kill, but in most scenarios the heat will work great. As this is an American vehicle, you also get access to a great secondary armament, an M2 Browning 50 cal mounted on the roof, which you can use to clear fences and other obstacles so your sensitive shells won't go off prematurely, keep aircraft at bay, and delete thinly armoured vehicles with extreme prejudice. This is your best friend against fast light vehicles like BT series tanks. Shoot with the Commander MG while you're lining up a shot from the main cannon. Part 3. Armour. The armour on the 105 Sherman is very good overall, with a 63mm plate on the front sloped at 46 degrees. This is late war Sherman armour, and as such it deals with most threats at 3.0 very well indeed. APHE shells from most nations will struggle with your frontal plate, only the German 75 being able to easily penetrate it. The turret is very well armoured too, without the weak spot found on early Shermans, with the gun shield being safe against all but the aforementioned German 75's APHE. Of course, I can't talk about an M4's frontal armour without mentioning the weak spot. The machine gun port on the front plate is a meagre 34mm at its thinnest point, so with a well-aimed shot, even reserve tanks like BT5s can penetrate your frontal armour and score a kill. In practical terms, this means try not to expose your right hand side to enemies, or wiggle your hull if you see someone sighting in on you. It might save you. Not everyone knows to shoot this spot, but as it's common to all Shermans, there's a good chance an experienced player will go straight for it. As for the sides and rear, the side armour isn't bad if at a steep angle. This is the other well-known Sherman weak spot. If someone gets around to your side, the plates are only 38mm thick, and if someone gets behind you, you can expect a trip back to the hangar very shortly. Part 4. Mobility. The M4A3 chassis that this tank is based on has the best mobility of all Shermans. With the improved GAA V8 engine, HVSS suspension, and wider tracks installed, your acceleration from a standstill and general off-road performance are very good, reaching a top speed of 42 km an hour or 26 miles per hour in around 17 seconds when fully spaded. The reverse gear is the only slight downside to your mobility. At a maximum speed of 6 km an hour, you can get yourself into trouble much faster than you can get out of it. Remember this when peeking around a corner or a hilltop in front of a dangerous opponent. Now, you should try to take advantage of your fairly good mobility to offset your terrible turret traverse. Instead of turning the turret, turn the tank. You almost want to play the 105 Sherman like a casemate tank destroyer, using your responsive steering to face enemies with your strong armour on the hull and turret face. Part 5. Playstyle and Counterplay. Now, for your general approach to playing this low-tier jumbo, I recommend brawling at medium to short range, and sticking closely to teammates. As with many vehicles, like the gun carrier I discussed in my last guide, getting flanked in the M4A3 105 is a death sentence, and having teammates around to back you up if you miss a shot, or to squash any pesky flankers sneaking around you, is invaluable. As I mentioned when discussing the mobility, it's best to keep your turret and hull armour facing towards your opponent, and you can use your fast steering to wiggle your armour and make your MG port weak spot harder to hit. The side armour can take a few hits if at a very shallow angle, and if you're facing a dedicated tank destroyer or well-armed opponent like a Panzer IV, you should try to angle your armour at about 20 to 23 degrees, like this, so that a shot will struggle to pen your front plate and ricochet off your side. Your gun is very reliable and should destroy anything you point it at, but beware of steep angles and add-on armour like side skirts. These can cause your round to do little or no damage when it impacts, or worse, ricochet. Best to aim for turret faces or exposed armour instead. If you're not sure where to aim on any given tank, it's usually not a bad idea to shoot around the main gun, disable the breach, and get another shot off after you've declawed your opponent. In summary, play at short to medium range, use your good armour protection to push through weaker tanks, stay close to teammates to catch flankers, and when fighting other heavily armed vehicles, use a bit of caution. As for playing against the 105 Shermans, I recommend using the slow turret traverse against it. If you can shoot out the tracks, these tanks go from scary, HE throwing mobile murder wagons to stationary HE throwing bunkers, and you can get around the side at your leisure. You do have to watch out for the roof mounted 50 cal if you're in a really light vehicle like a Sark or a Puma or anything open topped, but as long as you stay out of sight while you flank around the Sherman, you should avoid the worst of it. Another reliable way to take the 105 Shermans out is to wait for them to fire, preferably at an unfortunate teammate, then peek out and try to hit the MG port. This will work in almost any cannon armed tank, and can at least buy you some time by knocking out crew members. Really though, my main point is to try and stay away from the front of this tank. It's the most dangerous place to be. Part 6. Conclusion. In summary, the M4A3 105 is a reliable, well-armoured, extremely well-armed, high-explosive slinger at a low BR. You get the best Sherman chassis, the best mobility, a 50 cal which can deal with light tanks and aircraft and is always useful, and there are a number of fun lineups you can make with this. It will work very well in up tiers, where the good cannon and mobility make up for the armour losing effectiveness, and it absolutely destroys in full down tiers, where the weaker guns struggle to get through armour, and the 105mm will one-shot most tanks. In case it wasn't clear already, I love this tank, and you should definitely pick it up. It's some of the best fun you can have at the lower tiers. Thanks for watching, everyone. I had fun making this. I really love this BR and this tank, so it was an easy one to follow up my last video with. If you want to see a guide for a tank you love, leave a comment and I'll look into it. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and consider subscribing. I have more guides on the way. But my next video will be slightly different. See you in the next one.